Let's bring in one more image. Oh, also another thing, if you have Spotlight active and then you go to texture import and you import multiple images, they'll automatically stack into Spotlight. Let's say we want to bring in the back of his head here. We'll go ahead and add that. So now we have 3 images over here. So with these ones, these organizational, we can do tile proportional. And since these are all the same pixel resolution, they're going to be pretty similar. However, if we grab a texture like this, and then add that one, and then do tile proportionally, you're going to see it's going to be very tiny because these are very high resolution images, and then this one's really small. You can do tile selected, and because we have this one selected, it has a little bit more importance. And then you can do tile unified so that they're all essentially the same size. If you want to, you can move this one out, you can make it bigger, and then you can move this one out, and you can make it bigger. And then if you choose this one, and you drop fade down, you can actually fade this image out so you can paint through both of these images. And then if you hit Z to go into paint mode, RGB intensity, you can now paint skin and that through your image. So multiple images can be painted through in Spotlight. And another thing worth noting is you can paint and sculpt at the same time in Spotlight. So if I grab this image, tap Z and grab this image here, and we scale this up, and then I just turn on Z add and I sculpt through, you're going to see it's actually deforming the image. So it's going to be based on the value of this image is how much it'll allow you to sculpt. In fact, let's go ahead and change our stroke to drag rect. We can just drag rect through. There we go. And you can do both. If you want to do RGB and Z add, you can get height and color information at the same time. And if you need to do a little bit of cleanup work, you can always sample from here. So you can say, I want to sample this right here. You can change from a standard to a dot stroke, maybe throw in an alpha, like a dots alpha. So while you're painting, let's turn off Z add. RGB intensity will turn down a little bit. And you can kind of brush away or feather between these two and start filling in any blanks that you weren't able to get. And again, you can always just keep sampling here until he's all painted up. Now you may notice while you have Spotlight active, let's go ahead and we'll select this one, and then we'll do this tile selected, so this is the more prominent one. And so let's say we were doing a likeness sculpt of this guy. So we can go through here and we can kind of start moving our model around to kind of match his look here a little bit. Now we do Shift Z and it's like, you know what? I want to be able to see my Spotlight reference but also sculpt on this guy. So what I'm thinking is I can take the Spotlight reference and I can scale it down. I can move it over here to the corner. We can crank that opacity up and then hit Z, and then I can come over here and just have that sitting there. And I can just go through here and start sculpting. So if I go into my standard brush here, and I'm going to want to start sculpting, so I go to Z add, and it's not letting me do anything. I can still move, but I can't sculpt. Now if I go behind here and I start sculpting, you're going to see if I have Spotlight in front of the brush, it'll allow me to sculpt, but if I don't, it won't. Where you're going to find that is if you go over here to the brush menu, and we'll dock that, and we'll go ahead and hit R to kind of clear this out a little bit. Underneath the samples menu here, you're going to see down here is a Spotlight projection button. If you turn that off, now you can feel free to sculpt all you want with Spotlight active, and you don't have to be behind Spotlight in order to sculpt. The caveat is if we turn this to an RGB brush and we take it behind here and we try to paint through, it's not going to do it. It's just going to paint whatever color we have selected. So by turning Spotlight projection on or off, we are able to, paint and sculpt on our object. However, when we move it behind Spotlight, it's not going to project. So you'll have to turn that back on if you want to start painting through Spotlight again. And of course, I always want to reiterate, because we're in 3D, and this only took a few minutes to make, let's do a Shift Z to turn off Spotlight here. So even with this painted head, let's go ahead and bring everything back. So now we've got a kind of a creepy, a little bit realistic head on a very stylized body. But, feel free to make this as stylized as you want to. However, you can always feel free if you want to do caricature work, you can go through with this painted head and make some pretty drastic changes. And if you don't want to lose any information, you can always duplicate these things off. And in fact, we can just go ahead and store this one here. So we can do like Shift S, and then we duplicated this off. We're in solo mode, so now we can do another Shift S. Maybe we'll go in here with our pinch. And inflate. And you can always use your undo slider if you want to go back to the earliest version or kind of pick one in between. Now again, you can also store these differences as layers, but we'll get to layers later. And you don't have to have it colorized. This is just kind of a fun little spotlight option, but you can hold down Shift, turn off colorize for all of these. Go ahead and select a kind of a darker color here. And you can see how quickly you can line up hundreds of variants if you really wanted to.